Okay.
I got it muted so I can test the mics. Test, test.
I'll have you two come up right at the end. So I'm going to kick us off. Rhoda will talk about Vision 2031 and all that stuff. So my board colleague Steve and Rachel will give some information. Then I'll turn it over to you for the candidate forum, and then I'll close it out. If we get people here in person, it's okay.
But now the slide deck is up already on YouTube, so.
Channel. It'll
Is
just
this your title page?
YouTube, and then once that
People tuning in?
Okay, good. Hi, I'm Jen. Great to meet you. Tom taught school for decades. Oh, where did you teach?
I started at Washburn High School.
Yeah.
No, he taught at Washburn High School.
I'm sorry?
That gentleman taught at Washburn High School.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
What are their names?
Tom and I think the lady's name might be Jennifer. There's a gentleman named
Jack.
Oh, okay.
Last one, none of the Jack.
Do you know the end of that? No, we do. I'll have to send you the end of that statement.
Are you starting it or is Jen starting?
Yeah. My son chose Janice.
Okay.
But you substituted at Hopkins.
I have. I've substituted at Hopkins High School.
Oh, awesome.
And I know Rick Rockoff really well. And he's one of my favorite people.
His first year teaching.
Oh yeah, you talked about their busing adventures, right? Just get figured out.
Yes, I think we finally like. We talk. He's still.
I think the message,
We always wanted to say
that's why you take these.
Oh, cool.
And he's always asked something.
It's fine, it's fine.
Your dress is beautiful.
Thank you.
Well, he brought us in
Yeah,
to
like one thing.
register.
Uptown
A couple weeks ago.
station
A month ago now.
at like a certain time. I'll get off or pick me up with
That's
here,
fine.
and then I'll just invite you up. Like, oh, what are you gonna talk about? Okay, at like 6:30, and I'm like,
People can, like if they're on YouTube, they can see this so far.
Which kid are we talking about?
okay,
They can't hear it.
But they can't see me yet. So will it kind of go in and out? Okay. but I
Either
was just-
Uptown or Highway 7.
uptown, but that's
Or
fine.
Victoria.
Yeah, right. Okay, we're gonna get started. So we can all sort of be standing up here to begin, and then I don't want you to feel like you have to stand the whole time. If you want to sit, it's whatever you're comfortable with.
When do you start, when can they register?
We'll go over all that. Yeah. We've got like a timeline. Perfect. Yeah. Hi, welcome. Yes, thank you. And I updated, so we have the date in there now. It's perfect. Thank you.
So much closer than normal.
I know. We're trying a new setup, you know? We want to be accessible, Z. Good evening and welcome to our Hopkins School Board Candidate Information Session. My name is Jen Westmoreland. I use she, her pronouns, and I currently serve as chair of the Hopkins School Board. It is an exciting time for us here at the school board. We have 4 seats that are up for election this coming November during the general election. Our Hopkins School Board holds elections every 2 years. So every 4 years there are 3 seats up, and then the next 2 years we have an election for 4 seats up, and our terms are 4 years total. And we are a 7-member board. All of our seats are at-large seats, so we don't represent specific parts of the district. So the way that looks in an election context is that the top 4 for this election cycle, the top 4 vote getters become members of the school board. So we hope that the information we share with you tonight is helpful in terms of perhaps preparing your own run for the Hopkins School Board. And if you have questions that were not answered during the presentation tonight, you are welcome to reach out to us. Our contact information is on the school board page of the district website. You are welcome to reach out to us via email or give us a call, and any one of us would be happy to answer your questions, including our fantastic superintendent, Dr. Mary Perry-Reed, who is standing right here beside me. Also have my board colleagues, Director Rachel Hartland and Treasurer Steve Adams, to help out with the session tonight. Here we are. And I'll turn it over to our superintendent, Dr. Mary Perry-Reed.
Thank you, Chair Westmoreland, and good evening to everyone who is here with us in person or watching the live stream, or maybe you'll check it out in 48 hours. We welcome all of you, and thanks very much for being with us. So I'd like to share a little bit about Hopkins Public Schools and some details about this fantastic place that we all have the pleasure and fortune of serving, and then we'll turn it over to additional board members for some details around the election and how to get involved. So we are a sort of mid-sized district in the West Metro area. We serve about 7,000 students, pre-K through grade 12, and including Transition Plus. We have an early learning center in South Hopkins. We have 6 elementary schools that are all pre-K through grade 6, although this is the last year that our 6th graders will attend elementary school. We are transitioning our 6th graders to our 2 middle schools, and we're transitioning our 9th graders to our high school beginning in the fall of 2023. So that's something very new and different for our system, although lots of districts have already made that transition. We also have a single flagship high school. We recently built a K-12 online learning academy called Virtual EDU. And starting in the fall, we'll offer a blended learning component, so families can choose either 100% online or a couple days per week in person and 3 days per week online. We also have Transition Plus, which is a program that helps our 18 through 21-year-olds on individualized education plans transition to adulthood. And then we, of course, offer a broad curriculum and many programs throughout our district. Here are some additional data points about Hopkins. As I said, we serve almost 7,000 students. We have a few more than 1,300 staff members throughout Hopkins Public Schools. Just last week, we graduated 486 members of the class of 2023, and in aggregate, members of the class of 2023 applied to more than 2,300 colleges and universities. So our graduates are headed off to lots of institutions in state and out of state and even out of country. We saw a pretty dramatic enrollment increase in our Virtual EDU, our online program, due to families really wanting flexibility and some online component in their learning. And then we serve a very diverse student population here in Hopkins. About 50% of our students qualify for free and reduced price lunch, which is the poverty indicator in Minnesota schools. Our students represent more than 70 countries of origin, multiple languages, 70 to 80 languages from around the world. About 50% of our students are white, about 50% non-white, and so truly Hopkins is the world and the world is Hopkins. We have a very diverse student body. In Hopkins, we are extremely dedicated to our vision. It's a bold vision of innovation that we call Vision 2031. The reason we call it 2031 is that in 2018, when we launched the vision, the current kindergarten class was the class of 2031. And we knew that as a school district who wanted to be very responsible and progressive and really think about what our learning experiences needed to look like over 13 years worth of learning, because our our kindergartners when they enter, and then they graduate. They're going to graduate 13 years later, and so we want to not just plan 1 or 2 or 3 years out, but 13 years out, so that we can backward map all of the types of learning experiences that our young people will need as they get delivered into the world. So we have a really great vision, Vision 2031, which was also a product of lots of input and feedback from our internal and external stakeholders. Back in 2018, we partnered with junior high and senior high age students who interviewed about 300 family members throughout Hopkins, asking questions around what might a world-class education look like in Hopkins. So in addition to asking our family members and community members, we also engaged with our staff, and all of this input and feedback then was coalesced into our bold and progressive vision, Vision 2031. So as you can see on the slide, we do have 6 core values that that demonstrate the ways that we show up here in Hopkins to work. These core values were voted on by our staff members. We have also identified the traits of the Hopkins graduate, and we have innovation drivers. So what are the components of who we are and how we operate that will help us reach our vision? And over the last 5 years then, we have been very successful in reaching different aspects of our vision. You can see on this slide that one of our goals was to have a calendar that reflects religious equity, and so we have holidays and holy days that are representative of our largest stakeholder groups. We launched outdoor immersion at one of our elementary schools, Gatewood Elementary, which was first piloted at Eisenhower Elementary. We have experiential learning at Glen Lake. We've titled that program Glen Lake Go, where students take multiple field trips outside of the school walls to engage in all of the rich learning that the world beyond their school offers. We are embarking on Primary Years Program, which is the elementary version of International Baccalaureate at 2 of our elementary schools. And I should add that both of our middle schools also offer the IB instructional framework, International Baccalaureate. I talked about our 6-9, our grade 6, grade 9 transitioning our 6th and 9th graders to middle school and high school this fall. And at West Middle School, and also at a couple of our elementary schools, Gatewood and Alice Smith in particular, we are evolving our school model into what we call community school, which is it's a comprehensive school programming that offers wraparound services for our students. So think food pantries and dental and vision services, haircuts for students, so that families who need extra support, students who need extra support and resources are able to get them during the school day at school. Also, we are really excited about our Freedom School, which is a culturally affirming summer program for our Black and Brown students. We are facilitating that for our middle school age students for a second summer, this coming summer. We have Royals College and Career Center, which is a space in our high school that offers college and career readiness services to students. Also, students tutor one another in the areas of writing, academic research, and math. And then I've talked a little bit about Virtual EDU, our fully accredited K-12 online academy. We will be the first online academy in the state of Minnesota to offer a blended learning program in the fall of 2023. And one of our bold goals in Hopkins is that we will hire staff such that our staff demographics match our student demographics. And so as you can see, we have had a tremendous increase in the number of staff of color who have been hired in the last 6 years. So I'm really excited about our vision. We have wonderful school leaders, teachers, and other folks who all work together to support our students. So I've talked about some of the strengths of Hopkins, including excellent teachers. We have a number of teachers who have been nominated for Minnesota Teacher of the Year with quite a few semifinalists and finalists. We have a diverse student body that I've talked about, a very supportive community. Our community bleeds blue. Blue is our beautiful branded Hopkins color, and so we talk about our community bleeding blue, which means we have significant portions of our community who really live and breathe Hopkins and want to work with us to ensure that all of our students are well supported. We have a wonderful framework to introduce and increase curriculum and learning opportunities that are student-centered, personalized learning, and an excellent staff in the business services department to make sure that our budget is healthy, that we have strong fiscal health throughout the organization. Of course, as an organization, in this day and age, we're going to have challenges, including, all public school districts are challenged by not knowing whether the funding that comes from the state legislature will meet the increased needs of the system. So that uncertainty has always looms every session. There is a lot of school choice here in the West Metro area. Families have multiple high-quality school districts to choose from, multiple private school options to choose from, and multiple charter options. And so we are very grateful when families choose Hopkins because we know that there is a lot of choice for them. So it means a lot when families and students choose Hopkins. And then you've heard about something called the achievement gap or the opportunity gap. We call it the opportunity gap because we believe that it's the responsibility of the system to provide equitable opportunities for all students to be able to learn and be enriched at high levels. And so we are really working on that as a system to make sure that students can be successful regardless of their zip code, regardless of their personal circumstance, regardless of the challenges that they may face in their personal or family lives. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to a school board member. I'm not sure which one. I'm going to introduce our board treasurer, Steve Adams. Thank you.
Thanks, Rhoda. A lot of people ask me, why did you run for the school board? Well, here's some possible reasons why you might want to run for school board. Because we believe that our scholars are capable of making the world a better place. You're a strong supporter of public education, which I am. My kids went through the entire 13 years from kindergarten through 12th grade in Hopkins, and it prepared them well for their future lives. You're committed to working with individuals from diverse backgrounds, which I am, and we always try and do what is best for our students. We believe in the principles and values of Vision 2031, which Rhoda just went through. And if it's not you, who will do it? So people are sometimes confused about the roles of and responsibilities of a school board member. Our main responsibility is to set policy and governance. We set district level policy, we provide oversight, we try and amplify the community voice, and hold the district accountable to following those policies. We don't get involved with curriculum, much to the surprise of many people. And the other thing we try and do is be fiscally accountable, set budget targets and expectations. We've got a Citizens Financial Advisory Committee that meets in the fall and into January to set budget targets and priorities for our budget. And we set district property taxes. So every December we have a meeting, open meeting with taxpayers can come and express their concern or positive input regarding our property taxes. And the board has one employee, and here's our employee right now. We supervise the superintendent. She's a member of the school board, but has no voting power. And we approve and review leadership and strategic goals, which we do on a frequent basis. And in terms of what the calendar looks like and what kind of time commitment there may be, it's 1 to 2 official board meetings per month, 1 to 2 workshops per month. Workshops are where we hash out issues before they get to the official meeting. Community engagement events, you can go to as many or as few as you want to. There's always an opportunity for community engagement, seems like every week. 2 or more committee meetings per month. Every board member also sits on a committee of some sort, whether it's policy monitoring committee, whether it's the Citizens Financial Advisory, the Legislative Action Coalition. All of them have a board member assigned to them, and maybe in some cases 2 or 3. Also, district events at your discretion. Recently, we've had a lot of district events. We've had graduation. We've had a party for the staff last week. We have various student and staff recognition events. So those are at your discretion generally, but it makes sense to show up at them. And of course, year-end celebrations, graduation, retirement. As I said, the staff party last week for appreciation of their work. So those are the kinds of things that board members are expected to do. And I try and get out and meet community members on a frequent basis and hear their input, hear their complaints, just to stay engaged with the community and make sure that we're responding to the community in the way that they're expecting us to. I think this is where I toss it to Rachel, right? Rachel Hartland is a relatively new school board member. Been on the board 2 years?
That's right.
2 years, all right. Take it away.
Hi, I am Director Rachel Hartland, and that is correct. I am in my first term. I have been on the school board for 2 years now, and I am going to talk a bit about the preparation that's required, so some of the time commitments required outside of the typical school board meetings, the 1 to 2 that Treasurer Adams mentioned already. And the premise of this is pretty straightforward. It is to build an understanding of the context around these decisions that you're making. And so any prospective board member would want to come to a meeting understanding why it is that we would want to fund any particular project, or why we might adopt the calendar that we're considering. Our board and district, I'll back up one moment and say that this seems somewhat daunting to really understand the whole picture of Hopkins. And even if you've lived here your entire life or for a long time, like some of our board members have, this can seem like a lot to take on. And I want to assure any prospective candidates that we have a lot of very friendly experts at our board, district, and even state level to help you undertake this. We have the Minnesota School Board Association that has a lot of onboarding workshops and trainings that help any newly elected member learn kind of the fundamentals, the ins and outs of the role and the types of decisions that a board member will make. And then within our district, you would be assigned a board member mentor, and you have access, of course, to any of the cabinet members. You have access to the board members. You have access online to all of the old workshops and board meetings to help give you context around some of these decisions that you would be making. And any board meeting that you go through, you can see these 3 bulleted points about funding programs and district calendars. These are major points that take up, they make up the majority of our agenda items. And before any meeting, these board packets, they're called, they have the agenda for our items, and in them are a bunch of attachments that sometimes give context, or they would give a more thorough kind of packet of information around the topic that we will be discussing, so that you would have time to read it in advance and prepare any questions for whomever is presenting that information. And so in addition to the set board and workshop times, and our workshop time always immediately precedes the actual board meeting, you would have a couple of hours of reading and studying the packet. That packet is posted not only for board members, but also by law for the larger community to read and to understand as well, should they choose to chime in a variety of ways on any of those issues. And I think one important point, I know that this was a large consideration for me when I was considering running for the board, but it's very important to not let perfect be the enemy of the good here. You absolutely can be an effective board member and learn while you absolutely will learn while you are doing it, even if you, not that this has happened to me, but you will be surprised by a program that exists here under the Hopkins wheelhouse, even as you are in the middle of your board journey. And as I mentioned before, there's plenty of resources to help. And the Hopkins board specifically has an excellent chair and is working on continually improving their onboarding process. But we do have a variety of materials already to help a new member. I don't necessarily want to go and read all of these points word for word, but the Hopkins School Board does have this policy in place, and we do take it very seriously. We are a group that listens to each other respectfully, and that our primary motivation is the desire to provide the best possible education of a student in the Hopkins public school system, and that is a must for running for and participating in the school board. As is mentioned at the bottom of this page, you can find this on our district website at hopkinsschools.org under the district tab in the policies page, and is something that I recommend taking a look at. And it is, it's part of the onboarding process as well, signing off that you have read and understood all of these policies.
Streaming this. Oh. So I want the folks who are watching from home or
We're gonna
be able to hear your question.
We're gonna do a repeat of that question for the live stream.
Oh, yes. Oh, is there a Q&A question, a session, or, sorry, can I ask questions now?
Sure, go for it, and then we'll do the rest at the end.
Oh, okay, sorry. When it says support the, school board, I'm sorry, maybe you can go back. When it says support the school board on a decision, even if you're, I think it was something, if your decision was different, like what does that support look like for a school board member? Like if they all vote on something and one school board member does not want to, or did not support the decision, like what's that support expected of a school board member?
Do you want to answer that? Sure.
Sure. Vice Chair Shannon Andreessen.
Thank you. That's an excellent question. And part of what's really beneficial about going through the MSBA training is they go into detail on that very subject. And one of the things that was very helpful for me in starting my board service is knowing that while you have individual influence, all decisions are collective. So all votes that happen are collective in nature. And so your support, while maybe not in the voting process, comes with under that umbrella that once a decision is made by the school board, it has the full support of the board. Does that help?
Just to add a little additional context, so Vice Chair Andreessen mentioned dissenting, and you absolutely should speak your mind and your conscience at the table before the vote takes place. So it doesn't mean, don't express your views at the table, because it's very important that we do that, and that we listen to the views of our community members and bring those forward as well. So.
And I think for even one more piece of context, that at the workshop, at individual mentoring sessions, occasionally in individual discussions with a community member, there are learning opportunities and discussion points that happen that are often like the workshop is televised, but there's a lot of learning and questioning that go on that is not just the vote at the table. So that vote piece is only one element of it, and a lot of the questioning and a lot of the working out the details happens in some of those other points that I mentioned. And there have been multiple times where we have decided we don't have enough information to vote on something and table it for another meeting. Or most recently, we've added another meeting tonight because a member here decided that we did not have enough clarity around a piece and that they could not, in good conscience, vote yes on something. So there is, even if you watch a meeting and hear a lot of ayes around the table, that does not mean that that was kind of an automaton. Like, that's just what the board does, is just say yes to everything that happens. So there is a lot of process to follow, and there's a lot of information that goes on the agenda with chances to review and discuss. And the final piece that I'll discuss tonight is some of the benefits of becoming a school member. And I know Director Adams touched on a couple of them. And some of the events that you get to attend and some of that engagement with the community is a true benefit. Some of those events are really special and are really profound. They're moments that are literal life changers for some of our scholars, the graduation nights, staff retirement parties, scholarship nights. But I think one of the most interesting benefits of becoming a school board member is joining a team where everyone's rowing in the same direction. And that doesn't mean that everyone agrees, because that's not true. And it doesn't mean that everything is completely perfect the first time, but it is a unique experience to join a team where people are working so hard on that goal to get the best outcome for students. And this is something, well, I mentioned it is a unique experience, this deep dive into the environment that shapes either your children's or your fellow community members' lives every day. And you can see listed among here that, at least in terms of the monetary compensation, that board members do earn a small stipend. And I think that is it for me. And so I will hand it over to Chair Westmoreland.
Thank you. Thanks so much to my board colleagues and Dr. Mary Perry Reed, and looking forward to more conversation here at the end. I have the exciting job of letting you know about the legal requirements to run for school board. So these are all in Minnesota state law. So you need to be at least 21 years old, an eligible voter, a district resident, meaning you live within the boundaries of the Hopkins School District for at least 30 days before the filing period, and not a convicted sex offender. Here are some key dates for you to keep in mind. So the filing period for school board candidacy is at the beginning of August, but you can launch your school board campaign before that. You do not have to wait until you file to announce to the community that you're intending to run for school board, but do make sure that you file between August 1st and 15th so that your name appears on the ballot. If you file and then reconsider, you do have until August 17th to withdraw your candidacy so that your name would not appear on the ballot. I call the League of Women Voters Candidate Forum really the main event of campaign season. We are so fortunate to have a local chapter of the League of Women Voters that works so hard in our community to uphold democracy and to make sure that all of our community members are aware of local issues and the positions of candidates running for local office. And we're thrilled to have two guests from the League of Women Voters here this evening. I'll invite them up momentarily to talk more about the candidate forum so that you understand what is involved with that. Early voting begins on September 22nd. November 7th is the general election day. And new school board members are sworn in on January 1st, 2024. For additional information and resources, we've listed some options here for you. Of course, our Hopkins Public Schools website. Director Hartland mentioned the Minnesota School Boards Association, also the National School Boards Association, and then election information on the Minnesota Secretary of State website. So at this point, I'd like to invite our guests from the League of Women Voters up to talk more about the candidate forum and the great work that they do in our community. Welcome.
Hi, excuse me. Hi, I'm Jennifer Prince. I am the Voter Services Co-Chair with
Tom Schroffnagel, and I'm also a co-chair.
So people often ask us why the League of Women Voters puts on the forums. We are an organization that believes in voting for everyone, and we do a lot of voter registration. And we are a nonpartisan organization. And we are not, even though it's the League of Women Voters, Minnetonka, Eden Prairie, and Hopkins, this is our district area, we are not exclusive to women, as you can see by our co-chair. And what we do is when you have your your filing on August 1st, there'll be a packet with information about the forum that will be handed out when they file. And it'll have all the information about what they need to do to get ready. It'll give the date, which is September 13th. By that time, we may have a time, but because we are also working with the city council, we may have to wait until we see how many people we have, and then we'll have specific times. But you will be able to email us and say that you want to come, and we will email you back and start giving you information. And then we're also going to ask you to make sure that you and your supporters submit questions. This is very important because your community needs to know how you stand on issues. So you make sure that you submit questions, your supporters submit questions. And you want me to go through and run how we do it?
I think that's really important.
Okay. So we get all these questions submitted. And I have people come up to me and say, my question wasn't answered. Or I didn't hear my question. That's what they'll say. I didn't hear my question. Well, we maybe can do 15 questions at the forum. And what we do is we have a system where we have it's a spreadsheet, and it's a keyword spreadsheet. So we put down every question, and then we have it sort by keywords. And then we have to take them, because sometimes the questions are way too long, and sometimes they're a bit abrasive, and sometimes they don't make a lot of sense. And so we go through and we combine the keywords together to make our questions. So if you think that you're going to get your exact question into the forum, rarely happens, because we have to follow the bylaws of the League of Women Voters. And they make us make sure that we don't have our questions that are to one side. They have to be very neutral. They can't be abrasive. So we have to be very careful about that. But so that's why it's really important that if you're going to be running, you talk to your supporters and you say, these are the issues I want to talk about. These are the things that are important to me. And you send them in, and you'll get the information of where to send them in. We have a website where you can send them in, and then we go through and we usually break them, depending on how much time we have, we break them down into about 15 questions. And generally, about 5 of those are yes, no, explain, so that it's very clear. The forums are, now that hopefully everybody's healthy, are open to the public, and we want the public to come. If we have time, we might have general questions from the public, but we want to make sure we answer everything. So, and sometimes the public questions aren't concise enough. So it depends on how things are going. Anything else you want to add to that?
Just that we try to have, there's a sense of objectivity. We try to really make the questions objective. And as we go through them, if there's anything ad hominem or any type of question that is tailored for a specific viewpoint that might be prejudicial, then we really want to eliminate those types of questions. We're nonpartisan, so we want to make sure that people understand that.
And it's a committee of people that do it.
So I think that's really important to emphasize that we really want questions that pertain to the issues.
So I don't know if anybody has any questions, but.
Where is this year's forum going to be held?
It'll be at your city council chambers.
Okay, in which city?
Oh, in Hopkins.
Oh.
Yeah, Hopkins, we do one in each of the cities. Hopkins, we do in Hopkins. Minnetonka, we do in Minnetonka. And Eden Prairie, we do in. We're very busy then. So. Pardon me? Are the questions distributed to the candidates? No. That is something we will not do.
Could you repeat the question just for the online audience?
You want to do it?
Into the microphone.
Oh, are the questions submitted to the candidates prior to the forum? And the answer is no.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, you will be allowed to have an opening statement. And a closing statement, yes, opening and closing statement. But the questions, we believe that we want you to answer the questions with your true heart and not have some setup. We really want to get to the heart of the individual running for this office. Okay, thank you.
Thank you both very much. So, any additional questions? I have my microphone here, and I'll run it over to you. Oh, I was so excited to run my microphone around. Really?
Are school board member positions partisan positions?
They are nonpartisan positions. Any other rhetorical questions? I'm a teacher, so, we kind of dig those. Oh, great. I know, I didn't even get to do my mic run.
So this is for the existing board members. Is there one thing that you wish you knew before you ran? Just
Oh, coming in with a good question there.
Oh, me take it. That is a good question. My goodness, I do feel a little bit on the spot here. I think that I would have liked to know that it doesn't take a lot of funds to run, that there is a pretty good network of people around that are invested in small-time candidates, and that the people who have run before know them and are likely to point you towards some people who are very likely to be supportive. And the process is not terribly difficult. The Minnesota Secretary of State's office is also extremely helpful. And so it feels like a strange thing. It feels like a big thing to do, at least as far as actually running. And it is very doable.
I would have liked to know before I ran in 2017 that we were going to have a global pandemic. I would have also have liked to know that before I became chair in January 2020. Over to Director Adams for a serious answer.
Well, I would have liked to have known more of the acronyms. You know, every industry has its acronyms, but I was just overwhelmed with the educational acronyms. And finally, our chair at the time, Susan Wooten, was charitable enough to give me a glossary of acronyms that was about 3 single-space pages long. So that took me a while to get up to speed. The other thing I would have liked to have known then, but I think it's almost impossible, is how school finance works in Minnesota, because it's a very complicated function, and it took me 2 years to figure out exactly how the school financing works in this state. So, Shannon, do you want to add anything?
I think the thing that was the toughest transition for me, being a parent of kids in the district, but also being a pretty active parent. I was on the LAC and a volunteer, and I don't know, Steve, what is that?
Speaking of
Legislative
acronyms.
Action Coalition. Yes, it's in the glossary. I think navigating the different hats you have to wear when you become a school board member. It's a different role in the district, and that was a steep learning curve.
I can ask a question. Many of you as school board members also have children in the Hopkins schools. What does it look or sound like to care very deeply for what's best for your child, but also care very deeply for what's best for 7,000 students?
So I'm a parent in the district. I have a rising 7th grader who will be at West Middle School next year. And I think being a parent has given me a unique entry point into conversations in the district. I talk about my child sometimes at the board table when it's relevant to the issue that we're discussing. But I didn't run for the school board to make this system better for my child. My child already has a lot of privilege. And this system, quite frankly, was designed for kids like my kid. And so I ran to make this a more just and equitable system for all kids. And that's the perspective that I have brought to my work. Now, my kid is a really fierce leader for gender inclusion. And it has been really awesome to see them step into their power and into their role. I have not pushed them into that by any means, but it's been really wonderful to see them step up and advocate for things that are important for them. That's one of the great strengths of our district, is that focus on student voice and really encouraging students to develop their own passion and voice.
I think, to add to what Chair Westmoreland said, that I joined the board not with feelings about doing something specific for my children. I have a rising 4th, 6th, and 8th grader in a couple of schools in our district, and instead why I ran was that I am convinced that the Hopkins Public School District is the right place for my family, and I'm really interested in why things run the way that they do. I am very interested in the process. I'm interested in the legislature. I'm interested in doing a lot of really intense reading. And so this is exactly, it's my exact kind of way that I like to be involved. And I have had the good fortune to have my children be empowered to do a lot of really interesting things too, and I am really invested in making sure that all of the kids that are under our care get to do those things as well. And I have not found it to be really difficult to balance those perspectives, and like Chair Westmoreland, I have mentioned kids at the table when being a parent has given access to some community members' concerns, or it's given another perspective that has been like, either there's confusion or there's the thoughts among a particular group of parents that I have access to as a parent. Did you have anything further to add?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think that running for school board is different, and serving on school board is different than showing up at your kid's school in whatever way you choose to show up. So why I chose to serve was I'm a fierce advocate for public education, always have been. I'm a product of public education. My mom was a public school teacher, and just believe wholeheartedly in the ways in which public education serves everyone. And I think going into it with that perspective makes it a lot easier to be at the board table and make decisions that are for most students, while also I think being a parent gives you a really unique and important perspective on the ways in which the decisions you're making have an impact on students and families collectively. So yeah, I think it informs your decisions, but it doesn't make the decisions for you, if that makes sense.
Curious if there are any other questions before we wrap things up. Excellent.
So as a school board member, or as a incoming school board member, in what ways have you demonstrated inclusivity of diverse voices? I know that this is an all-white board, and the enrollment for Hopkins is 50% minority students, and just want to understand like how have efforts been to reach out to different parent groups or even different candidates to be included on the school board, and personally, like what have you done? Just want to understand.
Thank you for the great question. So all of the school board members who are here tonight are white. We have 2 school board members of color who are not here this evening. And your point still stands regarding district demographics and the makeup of our board. And historically, the Hopkins School Board has been a white board, and it has been made up of white middle class or upper class people. And I'm personally passionate about diverse representation on the board. When I ran in 2017, it was a collaborative campaign with Fortuna Ahmed, who was the first Somali American female school board member to be elected in the state of Minnesota. And I believe that our board needs to reflect our district demographics, and it needs to reflect the values of our district. So during my time on the board, some of the activities that we've done as a full board in terms of community engagement are attending the parent and caregiver groups, attending those meetings, engaging with parents in that way. We, especially during COVID, attending those meetings virtually to really get an understanding of how different people in our community were experiencing the pandemic and the inequitable impacts of the pandemic because of years of systemic oppression in this community that existed before the pandemic. So I think that would be one example of how we as a board have engaged in that work collectively.
I share Chair Westmoreland's passion for those parent groups and have done my best to be involved in them on a near monthly basis. It does take, everyone's time. So I'm sure if I looked back at my calendar, there will be a month that I have missed, but I do care very deeply about those, and I make every effort to attend them in that group's personal or preferred first language, which is sometimes difficult, but I really care about that issue a lot, and one of the professions that I have is to be a sign language interpreter and care really deeply about that, getting to use your home language and not having to change for a white person coming to sit in on your meeting. And one meeting recently, the interpreter was unfortunately unable to be there, and they very graciously changed English for me, and I am still very deeply appreciative of that and go out of my way to make that not happen. And I have worked, additionally, we updated some of the board. We have a few kind of canned phrases that the chair of the board has to say every meeting, and we did get those posted to our board in multiple languages, or excuse me, to the board website in multiple languages now, and I think we're going to work on getting our board bios posted in multiple languages to try to make the board and community involvement even just slightly more accessible. And I do appreciate you bringing up the question, because it absolutely is a place in our district that we could use some more work.
Thank you so much to everyone who attended here in person and watched via the live stream, and will watch the replay of this in the weeks and months to come leading up to the general election on November 7th. And again, if you have questions about topics that we did not cover during this session, please feel free to reach out to us on the school board page of the district website, and we'd be more than happy to engage with you that way. And thank you to my co-presenters this evening for sharing this information with our larger community. We have a special meeting to get to, so we're going to close this down. Thank you very much. This special meeting of the Hopkins School Board is called to order at 7:02 p.m. First, I would look for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next, I would look for a motion to approve the consent calendar.
So moved.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next, we'll move on to new business, which is our AST Oracle ERP contract. I'll turn it over to Dr. Mary Peary-Reed, and we will welcome our team to the table.
Thank you, Chair Westmoreland, and good evening to school board members, colleagues, and community members. And as we welcome my colleagues to the board table, I'll just provide a framing. We have a vision-aligned strategic plan in Hopkins that has 3 system goal areas: learning and teaching, school and district culture, and operations. And each goal area is guided by an audacious and overarching goal statement that drives multiple deliverables within that goal area. So our operations goal is that we will identify and solve for the gaps and flaws within our system that prevent our employees from being efficient or effective in their work. And one of the biggest gaps or flaws in our system is how we do enterprise resource planning. Essentially, enterprise resource planning is a software system that helps you run the business side of your organization. And in the case of a school district, that includes finance, human resources, vendor management, procurement, and other things. So we've struggled to be efficient and effective in Hopkins on the operations side because not only has one of our enterprise systems, Skyward, failed to evolve in accordance with our work needs, we also are using multiple microsystems that are not integrated and don't speak to each other. So we have known for a while now that we need a new and integrated and comprehensive system to help us systematize, modernize, and integrate our key business and human resources operations. And implementing a new enterprise resource planning system will be a significant endeavor. However, we're confident that a new ERP will improve efficiency and effectiveness throughout our organization. So there's been a lot of thought and planning that has gone into creating the foundation for the implementation, and I'm pleased to introduce the other members of our district-level steering committee. So that includes our Director of Information and Technology and Media Services, John Wetter, our Director of Business Services, Truro Chapanduka, our Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Lightfoot, and myself. We are on the steering committee. We also have a strong partnership with Chris Boyce, who is a senior leader in vendor management. I actually don't know your title, Chris. You'll discover I'm very poor with titles. And we also have a number of partners, I do believe, in the Google Meet to help us address board members' questions. So we appreciate our board members taking time this evening to engage in increasing understanding around our big why and what this is, and then we look forward to your questions. And at this time, I'll turn it over to our Director of Business Services, Truro Chapanduka.
Thank you, Dr. Mary Peary-Reed. Good evening, respective board members, and thank you for taking this time to spend with us as we try to explore our endeavors around an enterprise resource planning system. And this journey actually started a few years ago, but the current process we have started about 2 years ago. I remember when I joined the district, I was told that my predecessor and the director of information technology at that point in time, as well as the assistant superintendent, had been exploring, looking at different systems to replace our current Skyward system and other disparate systems in our system, as alluded by the superintendent. And I would not want to go deeper into the conversation about what is an enterprise resource planning system. I think the superintendent has summed up what we are looking at here in terms of our processes, both in operations, in business services, as well as human capital. I also want to remind the board and the community that 82% of our resources are people. So for us to be able to create the efficiencies, for us to be able to provide robust services to our customers, our internal and external customers, we need to have robust systems in place to address both our operational needs as well as our human capital and performance needs across our system. What we have here is a few slides which we'll go through around what we are trying to do, as well as our current system, which is Skyward, but is also complemented by a number of other systems which are not integrated, which don't communicate. So there's always some human intervention, moving files between so many different systems, which we have identified as redundant and very costly for the district from a compliance standpoint, as well as from just managing resources and timely providing reports to different stakeholders in our system. So the current Skyward system is actually kind of divided into one component, which is the finance side, the general ledger, and the other component, which is the human resources. But besides that, we also have other things which are tied, or other processes which are tied to the financials, for example. So the budgeting component doesn't really reside within the Skyward system, so we had to go by a different system to be able to do the work. And then when you start to look at other areas, not just across finance, but across human capital, you find that there are so many other systems we had to acquire for us to be able to perform our daily activities. That being said, I will actually share a slide here which kind of depicts our current structure in terms of how many systems out there we have, which are really disparate and not really well connected, like I said, which produces challenges around timely providing information, as well as giving visibility to how we are operating as an organization. The next component, I will hand over to Director John Wetter to actually take us through the technical systems landscape and how we ended up where we are.
Yeah, thank you, Turu. Looking at our technical landscape of where we exist right now and how that's helped informed our decision-making as we've been pursuing this change, is our current system is Skyward and implemented in 2003. The current version of Skyward, which they call their SMS 2.0 version, is actually going end of sale. Skyward as an organization is making a complete move to a new product line called their cumulative product. So Hopkins, having been on the Skyward SMS product, needs to make a change no matter what. So even the idea of a no change still is going to require a change in ERP for the system. We've seen some of our neighbors look at moving to that new cumulative system and have been met with some pretty considerable implementation challenges. I know at least one district here in the metro that actually backed out of that change and went a different direction. The current system that we do have, that SMS 2.0, runs on legacy database, which currently does not have much commercial support anymore. It's a database that is very difficult to interoperate with. Many of our other systems cannot directly connect to it, and as Director Chapanduca mentioned, this requires staff to make a lot of spreadsheet type movement of data in and out of the system, whether it be from some of our learning management or our student information system. Lots of those pieces need to come in via spreadsheets or other manual pieces, which we know then are error prone, as well as add complexity to that process. We've also made attempts to add systems in to fit specific needs, and that ends up being very expensive because of the engineering effort to actually connect those systems, because it is not a currently well-supported database. Also, it is an on-premise system, and we have some challenges around data security, continuity of operations challenges. We've made pretty considerable investment into information services operations side of the house to support Skyward and making sure that it is highly available for our staff. Looking at that, the landscape has just changed and what that looks like, from a system that we implemented in 2003. Then really look at that, that investment really needs to happen. We haven't done a lot of investment into that system because of the complexities involved in moving that. We know that we need to be better and have clear ownership of the different data systems. Right now, again, that's a very spread out ownership around those disparate pieces of data that live in all independent systems and then need to be brought together when we're trying to do analysis of that data.
Thank you, Director Weta. I'll give the floor to Assistant Superintendent Dr. Lightfoot just to take us through some of the human resources challenges.
Certainly, and I'll echo much of what has already been said, but try to give some specifics just as it looks at the human resource systems. For example, if we try to look at employee absences, we have 3 spaces with employee absences because there's necessary components. One is for our teachers that we have to have tied to ASOP, and the interoperability challenges that we've had have been prohibited. And so even now, when we come up with a new state mandate for sick and safety leave, we have to figure out how we have to, in 6 months, totally reconfigure the way that we track our attendance and absences in a system that isn't even set up to do what the state requirements have us required to do January 1st. So we're already looking at how we can patch up systems that don't work, how we are pulling from multiple spaces just to even get a functionality that is a basic requirement of operation. So when we speak to the need is obvious to all of those working within the system. I can't speak enough to the challenges that get presented when so much of the information has to be kept outside of or in different systems just for an operational capacity, because it means that we're pulling data from 4 or 5 different sources anytime that we have to even look at sometimes what may seem to be simple requests, needing complex solutions simply because it's held in different silos, and trying to connect that information becomes quite a challenge with limited staff that have the time and really the patience that it takes to do that when there are systems that are completely more designed in an ecosphere that serves it more holistically and does it more effectively. So we've been really looking for systems to help with this integration for, as Director Chapanduca identified, a significant period of time, and to look towards systems that have the ability to enhance our capacity and what we're able to deliver to employees, because part of the other experience that we are designing and planning for is people need information and more information, and the challenges that we have in pulling information from our system have become incredibly more complex and time-consuming, and that creates a very frustrating experience for our end users who need the information when they need it and are experiencing other systems in their world that have that immediate access. So that's what we're looking to design and deliver for.
Thank you, Dr. Lightfoot. I'll speak on the financial systems. Again, one example I gave is around our budget. Previously, our budget was actually managed through Excel spreadsheets, and then we ended bringing my budget file, which is a platform, which is a separate platform, which doesn't actually have connections to Skyward. Just like Director Waiter mentioned, just because of the database with Skyward, it's so difficult to connect with any other external third-party systems out there. So it ended up being a challenge between moving information, and some of this information is very sensitive, so it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, many hours in trying to audit, verify, and make sure that the information is accurate. We do hold a lot of sensitive information within both our human capital and our financial system. Payroll, very sensitive. It takes like a lot of effort, to just process payroll. Again, because of the fact that the system is not connected, and sometimes you have to move between so many different disconnected processes to get the end results. So what we are looking for is a system with enhanced features which allow us to actually control everything in one ecosystem and be able to produce desired results either to board members, to our leadership, to staff members, and to our community. Right now we are not there. We are struggling to actually produce those necessary pieces on time. By the time we produce the information, sometimes the information is already kind of outdated. We've been putting a lot of effort with different talents we have in our system to be able to at least operate at this level, just knowing that there is a lot of effort behind the scenes to get us to where we need to be. So hopefully the new system will be able to improve sharing of information. It will eliminate any redundancy, both in our data entry system as well as in information sharing. It will also create easy-to-use reports with capabilities to support the budget process as well as real-time live expense reporting. It also lead over time to lower management and operational costs through standardized, uniform, and integrated systems. So what we have right now in terms of the ecosystem we've found with Oracle and AST's implementation partners is a system which is all integrated. It sits in one ecosystem, in one database. So when we are onboarding an employee, everything is all tied together such that when it gets to payroll, no information is being moved through spreadsheets or other forms of reports and modified outside of the system. So we have the HCM, HR module, which is tied to our payroll, which handles all the core human resources. It also has a robust self-service as well the benefits, absence management, as previously mentioned by Dr. Lightfoot, workforce compensation, time and labor, payroll, and a lot of these components currently are sitting in systems outside of our ERP. We also have the general ledger, which is on the finance side, the accounts payable, accounts receivable, fixed assets, cash management, expenses, project and grant accounting. And again, some of these systems are not even available, so we have to improvise by using either Excel files or other third-party tools which are not connected to our current system. We also have our purchasing and procurement, contract management. Our goal is to make sure that we tie each contract to a purchase order, to a requisition, to invoicing. Currently, our system doesn't support any of that, as well as self-service supplier portal for any of the vendors we do business with, being able to manage the intake and output of information within our different systems. The other capabilities which come with the system around learning and professional development for staff, performance management, both on the instructional as well as on the operational side of the process, the planning and budgeting, as well as performance reporting, technology integration, since this will be a software as a service product, so we don't have to invest into the infrastructure of managing the securities or the servers to hold all this information. And based on what was actually included in the statement of work, our goal was to start the process in July if the board would approve the contract, starting with our financials, which will lead us to an additional phase with our budgeting and finishing with our human capital and payroll. And part of the reason why we would finish with human capital and payroll is because we need to align this with our calendar year for W-2 processing as well as tax calculations for end of year. So the HCM payroll will be finishing in December of 2024. That is if we go with the specified timelines. With that, we'll entertain any questions from the board.
Thank you very much. Comments or questions from my colleagues?
Chair Westmoreland.
Yes.
I believe I sent the group a number of questions last night that after reading through this 97-page proposal. Tell me, how did you end up choosing Oracle? You know, I'll preface it by saying I've been in the ERP business since it was the MRP business, so that goes back a ways. That was originally manufacturing resource planning, then it became ERP. And I was never aware that Oracle had a vertical solution for school districts. And I don't know, is this a vertical for school districts, or is this something that's, I've been involved in projects that have been a force fit, quite frankly.
Sure.
You know, manufacturing resource planning for a services business, for example. And I'm just concerned that this might, you know, be a force fit for education. But are there other organizations using this in the other school districts in Minnesota?
And before you proceed, Director Chambaduka, I just wanted to thank you for your question, Treasurer Adams, and then just to let our community know that we did respond to all of the questions via email and sent it to all board members.
Oh.
So perhaps you can reference that, but it's also a good note to make our community members aware of, and then you can proceed to rural.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Mary Perry, and thank you, Director Adam. Like the superintendent said, yes, we did respond to the questions. As far as the history of Oracle, being in the K-12 industry, actually I do have Ms. Vic Gorman on the virtual meeting from Oracle. Maybe she can give us some insights, and then I will get to explain how we ended up selecting Oracle as our partner. Are you available, Vicky?
I think there might be. I haven't received any invite to join, so I'm not sure if there's a connection issue with the outer people outside the organization.
Yeah, if they're not part of Hopkins schools, they have to be let in usually.
Yeah, there's, Elise said it would pop up, and nothing's popped up yet, so I'm wondering if there's a connection issue.
I'm not sure if.
Probably didn't take more time than we have.
Yeah, but anyway, so well, I can probably answer maybe the question. I was hoping that Vic would be available to at least kind of give us some history in terms of Oracle. But I've used Oracle before in K-12 when I was at Oma Public Schools. So that's where I actually got some of my Oracle experience. Here in the Twin Cities, St. Paul's Public Schools, they are on the Oracle platform. How did Hopkins end up choosing Oracle? Actually, as we were exploring opportunities around the next implementation system, me, John, a couple of our human resource department members and some of the business service made a trip to Milwaukee. One, to get some understanding of other school districts who have been implementing new ERP systems at the Association of School Business Officials. And when we were there, we ended up actually bumping into some demos, and Oracle was one of those companies which was presenting there. And then we did work on an RFP, and then we send it out. And actually, you can see from the responses, there's a large listing of the initial vendors who intended to actually submit a proposal. We ended up receiving 3 proposals. One was from Skyward, the other one was from Power School with their e-finance, and the other one was from Oracle. And after working with an external, there's a large listing of the initial vendors who intended to actually
Time delay.
Okay. So I think that's Vicky comment from Oracle just joined. So I was explaining in terms of how we ended up with the selection process with Oracle after receiving 3 responses between Skyward, Oracle, and Power School. And then looking at the landscape and architecture of what we're trying to build in terms of what we have currently and the direction we are trying to take, we ended up evaluating Oracle as the best partner to take us through this journey.
Chair Westmoreland?
Yes.
I think for the community to note that the school board did not object, I think, to the process or even the selection of Oracle, that wasn't it at all. It was kind of an 11th hour, 97-page add to our consent calendar with no real discussion around a fairly large budget piece. And so I can really appreciate the time and consideration that went into this presentation and everyone's presence here this evening. And so I wanted to say thank you. And then I think the board did rely on Treasurer Adams' professional network here and experience for the list of questions that he put forward. And in them, he addressed a lot of concerns, and among them, I kind of wanted to point out one in particular that says, he asked which current applications will be replaced by the Oracle ERP, and I will actually ask that question so you guys can answer it, but one thing that I wanted to point out was that the total licensing fees, according to our email, that will be saved by the budget is $700,000 annually, and then we're swapping that for about $480,000 in an Oracle licensing fee contracted for the next 5 years, which I think is a wonderful savings to our district to note. And so did you guys, would you like to answer what of our applications will be replaced by our ERP, and if all the employees that have to touch these various systems, are they on board and excited about getting away from all of those touch points?
Yes. So again, based on the calculations we did across our different operations, and sometimes you don't see the visibility because when some of those applications are brought in, is to address an issue. At the same time, we found out that the architecture within Skyward doesn't accept any integration. That actually became a challenge. And I mean, this has been happening over time, just considering that we started this journey with Skyward in 2003, and over time, some of these challenges which have not been addressed either by Skyward or which are new, maybe through some customization, through contracts, and looking for ways to at least address them and make sure that we are paying our employees or making sure that we are capturing and recording absences or all the other operations which may be happening in the buildings. So we did calculate right now on the licensure about 700, from what we know, about 700,000. And then if we compare to the licensing fee from what Oracle is bringing to the table, we are capturing about 270,000 just in licensing fees. We are not also looking at the extra labor which has been put in to make these connections happen.
Thank you, and I wanted to add one clarifying. I know you mentioned Skyward. I was going to say if there was anything else, any other of those of note is the clarifying point that I meant to say. But yes, I can very much appreciate not only in licensing fees, but in people asking, how do you do this again? And having to re-enter data is a serious loss of time and use of resources in our district.
I might also add there, Director Hartland, with your question about folks being excited about the change and what possibilities might happen as we met with the Oracle and AST team through the finalist process, through the RFP. There was, I think, quite a bit of excitement. You could see in the room where processes were demonstrated to us that right now can take hours, if not days of time that are now a run report type of a process. And so I think that folks certainly are excited to see that. The interoperability components, I think, are also some pieces that folks are already looking forward to.
Yeah, that's wonderful, and I did also see that in their implementation timelines that they're contracted to provide 2 months of real-time live support for after every implementation phase. So is that for any of our employees who are using these system hands-on? Any of our employees actually can call and can get assistance from someone live? Okay. Thank you.
Yes, Vice Chair Andreessen.
Thank you all for being here. I just had a couple of questions. One, I have a vague memory of something that happened, I think, early in the pandemic where we switched from Infinite Campus to Canvas. And my understanding is that Canvas was going to take over what Infinite Campus was doing. And to my knowledge, that hasn't yet happened. So just wondering if that was a consideration that was taken into account in this process, not saying we're comparing apples to apples, because I'm pretty sure we're not, but just wondering if that was part of the process of truly understanding that what we think we're going to be replacing is actually going to be replaced by this.
Yeah, I think I'll first address the Canvas and Infinite Campus portion that you mentioned there. So Infinite Campus is our student information system. So that is as we refer to them, the system of truth that holds all that data around our student learning experiences. And Canvas is our learning management system. So that is the system that is that forward-facing system around learning in the school district. The The integration between those two is very tight. The student information system is what informs the learning management system around what are those class structures, what are those pieces that, so that students are seeing the correct information, teachers are seeing their students. And right now, you'll actually see some changes there this fall. The work around moving Canvas to be the forward-facing system for our learners, and our caregivers, we're going to be seeing changes toward that actually this fall. That is actually an active project that's seen a lot of work this last year. So you will see that. And as you think about with systems this large, sometimes that takes longer than we anticipated as far as the moving that forward. What we really had to do is actually revisit some of the decisions that we made when we were under extreme pressure in early 2020 to implement Canvas as our new learning management system. We had to go back and revisit some of those decisions again to put us into a position where we are able to move that into the forward-facing piece on that. And we certainly are trying to be very planful about the ERP process, and that's why we're looking at that roadmap. And as you can see, it's a 2-year roadmap around how we're being purposeful about replacing those systems that we are going to be replacing and understanding systems that Oracle would need to connect to. And to an example that you mentioned, there would be our student information system as we move forward towards some of these goals around our academic return on investment.
Great. That kind of leads into my next question, which is I think that reducing redundancies and making people's jobs easier is always a wonderful thing, and we all want that. And having systems that house most of the data makes running reports easy, and I'm sure interacting with the state much more effective, and also probably reporting to the school board. But one of my concerns, and hopefully I think it was touched on just a little bit in the presentation, was does that then open us up more to security breaches if data and things are stored in one place and are interfacing with other systems that house a lot of very sensitive data? I think we've all been aware that school districts have been under attack lately for these very things, and just wondering if that does it make us more vulnerable?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Director Andreessen. I think I'll touch on a couple pieces, and then if Director Chapanduka or Dr. Lightfoot have anything to add as well. Right now, actually, in our risk register, as we look at our current risks we have with data in the school district, Skyward is our #1 item. As it is an old system, we've had to put into place numerous compensating controls to protect the data that lives therein. And it being an on-premise system, again, the structure of it makes it difficult to defend as we are in our current place. Moving forward, we've had a lot of discussions with Oracle through the process leading into this, and even pre-RFP to make sure that it would look like it would be able to meet our needs there. Yes, you are putting a lot of information in one place. That information, a lot of that already is in one place, and I think that actually we are moving toward a much more secure housing of that data than we're currently at. Both through the protocols required to access that data while that data is in motion, and then while that data is in rest, sitting in those secured cloud storage locations. I think we're going to be in a very good place from a security standpoint, being able to have proper controls across all of our systems, which right now has been a considerable concern which was one of the pieces of information that led into this conversation to begin with.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Any other questions?
Chair Westmoreland.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Superintendent Mary Perry Reed pointed out to me that there had been responses to the questions that I sent last night. So thank you for that. I haven't had a chance to review all of them. But I think the public needs to hear some of those answers too. And one of the questions I had was, why are we proposing to go live during the school year rather than at the end of the school year? And I know that's the case for every module that we're implementing here, so I'm concerned about disruption
Sure.
of the school year.
Sure. Yeah, so to answer your question, Director Adams, why we went with this structure about going live during the school year is just to address some of the concerns where when we get to the year end, when we are closing our books, and the processes and steps we need to take. So we have that time period to be able to actually make sure that our books are all the transactions have been actually recorded. We've tested them. And then when the beginning of the new school year or our new fiscal year starts, everything has been tested and is actually sitting in the new system. This is on the financial side. On the HCM payroll side, that's the piece I kind of explained earlier on around our year-end processes with the calendar year and the processing of Form 941s, the processing of W-2s, the calculations of, all the taxes and benefits, and having a cutover of December 31st give us actually a good process of moving into the new year with new information. And then the cutover is happening in Skyward. That's where we are calculating all the W-2 information. And starting in January, we definitely start with the new set of data, which will take us to the end of the fiscal year. And this is the process which actually, as AST explains it, that's the process they've refined over time in working with so many different clients in the K-12 industry, and they found out it actually makes more sense to do a cutover in the middle of the year so that there's no disruption and there's at least a good handoff of information when we are doing our final year-end processes.
All right. Well, it also appears that building interfaces to our non-Oracle applications, which we will continue to have in some cases, are not in the project scope. Did I get that correct? So someone's going to have to build the interfaces to some of these other systems. Is that going to be us, or is it going to be AST, or is that, and do we have any guess as to what the cost might be for those?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Treasurer Adams. When I look at that and think about what that might look like, we did not include those because we wanted to make sure we first of all understood the system in place as it would be deployed. And then through making some of those connections, that's where we've also been thinking about what staffing in support of the system looks like. And in our enterprise information specialist position, that's where we have been, we are coincident with this project getting ready to have personnel that will be able to really be focused on connecting those other pieces of data. As we have, 2 projects that are kind of moving towards a couple of those goals. We have our data warehousing, our student information and data warehousing project, and then we have the ERP project, both of which are working, toward the same goal. And we're going to hopefully, the way we're planning this out is to have those integrations ready to go for both of those pieces. They're going to be different integrations toward different ends, but it's the same type of data movements to have those API connections in place. Also knowing that as we're going to the Oracle platform as a well-documented open API type of a platform to make those integrations possible, which whereas, as we talked about in our current platform, we've had to abandon several times where we've wanted to integrate other applications because those open APIs are not available.
You mentioned additional personnel. That was another question I had. As I looked at the project plan, there was a significant commitment of time for district personnel. And do we have those people in place right now, or are we going to have to hire several people to maintain this system? What's the cost to the district for any additional personnel?
Sure. I can start on that, and the other colleagues can contribute to this too. Yeah, so we're actually working on how we are mapping that. Our hope is we'll be able to leverage some of our internal staff to be able to help with some of that work. Is there a possibility to actually either bring in some temporary staff or help? Yes, but we are still working with AST so that we can map how their structure is, since they lead the process, how their structure looks like, and then who do we have in our current system who can be paired with their current structure, and then identify any gaps. And that's the work we are actually in the process of working on right now. So to answer your question, there is a potential that we might need some help. To what extent, that's what we are trying to figure out, like what help do we need? Can we leverage some of our current staff in the system to be able to help with that work? So that we can relieve any of our subject matter experts to spend time designing what the processes will look like in a new system. And that's why we also phased out this process so that we don't have a big bang between HCM, payroll, and financial all at the same time. We spread the resources so that there is at least some support on both ends at each phase of the project.
Okay. Have you made an estimate of what the have you budgeted for a contingency for cost overruns and for all these other things that are not included in the project plan? Is that in the budget for the coming 2 years?
Yes, I think we've factored in all the components. So the structure with AST is a fixed cost. So their pricing is fixed. Okay. So everything we've put in the statement of work, that's why we did spend time going through the statement of work between Hopkins and AST to make sure that we've encompassed everything needed for the project. And one of the things we've agreed with our implementation partners is maybe no change orders or very minimal change orders. Is there a possibility that there might be components which may require some tweaking or some shift based on what we anticipate right now? Yeah, and we do have some contingents in the budget to be able to cover for that. If you ask me a dollar amount, maybe I can probably put it maybe at around maybe $500,000 in case something doesn't really work out when the implementation starts.
This budget in this proposal that we have in front of us is like 5.2 million, right? I mean, when you include all of AST's costs and the Oracle subscription fees, isn't it 5.2 over, I don't know, 4 years, something like that?
Over 5 years.
I'm sorry?
Over 5 years?
Yeah, 5 years.
Over 5 years,
okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So the significant component is obviously the implementation costs, and then the licensing fee uniform across the 5 years. There's no increase for those first 5 years.
Well, as I mentioned, I've had a lot of experience with ERP systems and ERP implementations, and I've yet to see one come in on time, on budget. So I'm concerned that we've got adequate consideration for any possible additions, anything that's not included in the project plan. and anything that might come up and surprises. So I think typical estimate is about 30% over the initial project cost. So that's what I'm concerned about, is that we're making provisions for that, you know, out of the 5.2 million that we're planning for that period. So, okay, thank you.
Any additional questions? Well, thank you very much for this robust discussion. And with that, I would look for a motion that the board approve the AST Oracle ERP contract.
So moved.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the contract. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, team.
Thank you.
With that, I would look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. This meeting of the Hopkins School Board is adjourned at 7:53 PM. Thank you.